it is a rather sad occasion, these memorials, but you know, we all know that all of us will come to the end. I never worked with Lotfi directly, but we have known each other for at least 30 or 40 years. We would meet. I worked in robotics, and in the 70s I worked in artificial intelligence, computer vision, and so we would meet in these pattern recognition conferences. And we enjoyed the fact that we had a certain shared cultural heritage. I was born in Czechoslovakia, he in, I think, Azerbaijan. So we understood the fate and sorrow of Central Europe that it went through. When you think about it, from 1900s, you know, at least the part where I come from, went from the Habsburg monarchy to liberal democracy, then it went to Hitler occupation, then it had a little bit of 3 years of liberal democracy, then it went to a communist oppression, and now the people there, and this is where Lotfi and I often talked at Berkeley when I came in 2000, because he listened to the Russian news quite a bit, and I knew a little bit what was happening in Central Europe, that how difficult it is for the people, how difficult it is for the people of that region to cope, thank you, to cope with all these changes, and that you just cannot ignore it, and how it affects the scientific enterprise which we both cared about. One thing I will say that I really appreciate about Lotfi, and that was that he was a true scholar. You know, and I mention this especially today when academia is pressured quite a bit to do application and industrial connections and so. Lotfi, with his stubbornness, he stick to his guns. And he and I really share this common conviction that if academia is not going to do research that may have applications in 10 years, then certainly industry will be in trouble. And that if academia succumbs to the investigations that are useful next 3 years, that is going to really hurt everybody. So, comment on the fuzzy sets. As I said, I never worked with him, and so I really don't have one way or the other vested interest, but it's fascinating why he was, as you know, and this is not a secret, that fuzzy sets were not really accepted in the United States by the scientific community. And the argument was, why do we need fuzzy measure when we have theory of probabilities? And Lotfi's arguments were more philosophical than mathematical. He argued that the fuzzy measure represents the uncertainty that you cannot get through distribution, that the probability theory is anchored on the idea of multiple measurements and distributions, and that some things you just cannot measure. I mean, that's the real fundamental dichotomy between the fuzzy approach or fuzzy measure, which is not really a measure because it's not quantized. It has this interval between 0 and 1, but in between you really cannot say, is it 0.3 or 0.5? And so that is still hanging out there, you know, between the Bayesian people, the probabilistic people, and the fuzzy people. Nevertheless, it's interesting to note that while Lotfi was a true theoretician with these applications in mind, that actually the fuzzy control became much more applicable and realizable in control than in other areas. And I found interesting, where is the gentleman who just gave this talk before me, about how he was talking about the modeling the climate, basically the Aldino, with fuzzy, when if you go to any geological or any weather-related research, people measure, you know, dynamics and fluid dynamics and so forth, but very few, I haven't heard in my 60 years or so career talking about fuzzy control. But fuzzy control has found applications in automobile industry and in generally in automation. So that's for Lotfi's science. He was admired by many people because of his persistence. As some of you know, Lotfi has to be credited for creating the electrical engineering computer science department here at Berkeley, which wasn't without resistance. I wasn't here at that time, but I heard all the stories and conflicts that actually it's fascinating, percolate until today, where, you know, some people who remember those days wanted to separate, again, computer science and electrical engineering. Lotfi, and I am very grateful to him that he persisted at this EECS, because I enjoyed the fact being a professor here, and in robotics, you know, it's not even electrical engineering, computer science, but it's also mechanical engineering and now material science and psychology. So it's a very interdisciplinary field. And I think Lotfi saw it's coming. Now, unfortunately, I have some other obligations at 4 o'clock, so I asked to speak before. But I will conclude that Lotfi also was a charmer and he loved women. That's for sure. And you know, in these days when people are being sued for various sexual harassment, he might be in trouble a little bit, because it might be, pardon me? Because it might have been misinterpreted, his kindness and his warmness, and he liked to hug and kiss. And so I, coming from that part of the world, I didn't take it sexually, but I took it as a sign of friendship, and we stayed in good terms. And at the end, I will say that he was blessed by his wife, Faye, who really admired him. She always told me he's a very unusual man. That was her word, unusual man. And we socially interacted when I came in 2000 here to Berkeley. And I'm not surprised that he didn't survive too long after she passed away, because they were like the couple, you know, who fight from time to time, but they were very closely coupled and loved each other. And so I will always remember him as a mensch. Thank you.